Sarah Martinez adjusted her scope for the third time, squinting through the morning haze that clung to the mountain range. The weekend shooting competition had drawn marksmen from 3 states, but she was here for one reason only: to prove that her custom-built rifle could outperform anything the military contractors were peddling. At 42, Sarah worked as a software engineer for a tech startup during the week, but weekends belonged to precision shooting. Her garage workshop contained more sophisticated equipment than most small-town police departments. She machined her own bullets, calculated ballistics tables that accounted for variables most shooters never considered, and had spent the last 5 years perfecting a rifle design that incorporated principles she'd learned from studying orbital mechanics. The target sat impossibly far away, a small steel plate barely visible even through her 45x magnification scope. The range officer had announced the distance with skepticism in his voice: 3,532 meters. Most competitors had packed up their gear when they heard the number. The previous record for this competition was 2,100 meters, set by a former Navy SEAL who'd trained at Quantico, Sarah's shooting partner. Mike shook his head as he watched her methodically check her equipment. "You're crazy, you know that? That shot's theoretical at best. Winds gusting, temperatures rising, and there's a 20-degree upward angle." She smiled without taking her eye from the scope. Theoretical is just another word for untested. The morning air carried sounds from the valley below where early hikers were beginning their trails. Sarah had been calculating this shot since she'd first heard about the competition 6 months ago. She'd driven to this exact spot 4 times to study wind patterns, mapped the topography with GPS coordinates accurate to centimeters, and even factored in the Coriolis effect that most shooters ignored at distances under 5,000 meters. Her rifle was unlike anything else on the firing line. The barrel, machined from a solid piece of stainless steel, incorporated a twist rate she'd calculated specifically for her hand-loaded ammunition. The stock, carved from laminated wood she'd treated with a polymer compound of her own design, flexed in precise ways that compensated for harmonics other shooters tried to eliminate. Most unusually, her scope mounting system included micro-adjustments that accounted for barrel temperature changes down to tenths of degrees. The mathematics involved in the shot filled 3 notebooks. Bullet drop at this distance would be nearly 40 feet. Wind drift could push the round 6 feet off target with a 5-mile-per-hour crosswind. Air pressure, humidity, temperature gradient, even the rotation of the earth all played roles in where her bullet would impact. Other competitors watched from behind the firing line, some making jokes about impossible shots and weekend warriors with too much money and too little sense. Sarah had heard it all before. They saw a middle-aged woman with graying hair and reading glasses hanging from a chain around her neck. They didn't see the mind that had debugged code for satellite navigation systems or the hands that had assembled precision instruments for NASA, contractors. She chambered around. She'd crafted specifically for this moment. The bullet weighed exactly 250 grains, its copper jacket polished to mirror brightness. The powder charge had been measured to the 10th of a grain on a scale that cost more than most people's cars. Even the brass case had been annealed and sized with tolerances measured in thousandths of inches. "Winds shifting," Mike observed, checking his portable weather station. "Coming around from the northwest now, maybe 8 miles per hour." Sarah nodded, making minute adjustments to her scope. She'd anticipated this change based on morning heating patterns she'd observed during her reconnaissance trips. The warming air would create thermals rising from the valley floor, creating convection currents that would affect her bullet's path for the middle third of its flight. The range officer approached with his spotting scope and radio. "Ma'am, you sure about this? I've got observers positioned downrange, but at that distance, even our best equipment might not catch the impact if you miss the target frame." "I won't miss the frame," Sarah replied quietly. She settled into her shooting position, a stance she'd practiced thousands of times in her backyard range. Her breathing slowed to the rhythm she'd learned from meditation practices adapted for shooting sports. The rifle became an extension of her body, its weight distributed perfectly through the bipod and rear support. Through her scope, the target appeared as a tiny speck against the rocky hillside. At this magnification, even her heartbeat would cause the crosshairs to move. She synchronized her breathing with her pulse, waiting for the moment between heartbeats when her body was stillest. The wind gauge on her scope showed steady conditions. Temperature readings from her wireless sensors positioned downrange indicated stable air. All her calculations pointed to this moment as optimal for the shot. Sarah took up the slack in her trigger, a two-stage mechanism she'd tuned to break at exactly 3 pounds of pressure. Her finger rested on the trigger's face with the precision of a surgeon's touch. The world narrowed to the tiny circle of her scope's field of view. Years of preparation, months of calculation, and hours of setup compressed into a single moment of decision. She pressed the trigger. The rifle's recoil pushed against her shoulder with familiar authority, but she rode it smoothly, maintaining sight picture to watch for impact. The muzzle blast scattered dust and pine needles around her position. For nearly 7 seconds, the bullet flew through mountain air, crossing ridgelines and valleys, rising and falling along a parabolic path that existed first in Sarah's calculations and now in reality. The radio crackled. Impact. Holy. Impact confirmed. Dead center on target. Silence fell over the firing line. Even the range officer stared through his spotting scope with an expression of disbelief. Mike grabbed Sarah's shoulder. Did you hear that? You nailed it. Dead center at 3,032 meters. Sarah sat back from her rifle, removing her ear protection with hands that trembled slightly from adrenaline. She'd known the shot was good the moment the trigger broke, but confirmation still sent electricity through her veins. Around her, competitors who'd been making jokes minutes earlier now approached with expressions ranging from amazement to suspicion. How had a weekend warrior just accomplished something that belonged in record books? What Sarah didn't know was that her shot had been observed by more than just competition officials. High above, a military reconnaissance satellite had been tasked with monitoring the shooting competition as part of a routine surveillance sweep. The satellite sensors had tracked her bullet's entire flight path, measuring velocity, trajectory, and precision with instruments designed to evaluate enemy capabilities. That data was already being transmitted to a secure facility 3 states away, where analysts were trying to understand how a civilian had just demonstrated shooting capabilities that exceeded their best military snipers. In a windowless room at Fort Bragg, General Patricia Hayes received the preliminary report while reviewing candidate files for a classified program that didn't officially exist. General Patricia Hayes set down her coffee cup with deliberate precision and read the report again. 37 years in the Army had taught her to distrust anything that seemed too good to be true, but the satellite telemetry data was unambiguous. A civilian had just accomplished something that her best snipers considered theoretically possible, but practically impossible. Martinez. Sarah Elizabeth, she read aloud to her aide, Lieutenant Colonel James Wright. Age 42, software engineer, no military background. Mechanical engineering degree from MIT. Computer science from Stanford. Clean background check, no red flags. Wright pulled up additional files on his tablet. Ma'am, there's more. We've been tracking her for 6 months through routine surveillance of shooting competitions. Her accuracy scores have been climbing steadily. This isn't a fluke. The general studied the ballistics analysis. The satellite had measured the bullet's velocity at multiple points along its trajectory. Wind speed and direction had been logged at 3-second intervals. Even the target's GPS coordinates had been verified to centimeter accuracy. There was no disputing what had happened. What do we know about her equipment? That's where it gets interesting, General. Intelligence suggests she manufactures most of her components herself. Custom barrel, hand-loaded ammunition, proprietary scope mounting system. Our analysts believe her rifle represents technology that's potentially superior to current military specifications. Hayes walked to the window, overlooking the training facilities where America's elite soldiers honed their skills. She'd spent decades building programs designed to push human performance beyond conventional limits. The classified project she currently oversaw, codenamed Artemis, was designed to identify and recruit individuals with exceptional natural abilities that could be enhanced through advanced training and technology. The problem was that traditional military recruitment missed civilians who'd developed extraordinary skills outside conventional channels. Sarah Martinez represented exactly the type of individual Artemis was designed to find. Her psychological profile? Wright consulted his files. Highly intelligent, detail-oriented, perfectionist tendencies. No indicators of instability or extremist sympathies. Colleagues describe her as quiet but respected. She's apparently solved several complex engineering problems that her company's competitors couldn't crack. The general turned back to her aide. I want a full workup on her background, her methods, and her equipment. But do it quietly. If she's as good as this data suggests, we need to understand how she's achieving these results. 24 hours later, the analysis landed on Hayes' desk. Sarah Martinez had essentially reverse-engineered principles of long-range ballistics that military researchers had spent millions developing. Her methods were unconventional but mathematically sound. More importantly, her approach suggested an intuitive understanding of physics that formal military training often overlooked. The Artemis program had been searching for individuals with exactly these characteristics. People who combined technical expertise with natural talent and the dedication to push beyond conventional limits. Sarah's weekend shooting hobby had inadvertently made her one of the most capable precision shooters in North America. But Artemis wasn't just about finding talented individuals. The program existed because humanity was no longer alone in the universe. 3 years earlier, first contact had occurred not through radio signals or diplomatic channels, but through violence. An alien reconnaissance force had attacked a research station in Antarctica, apparently believing Earth was uninhabited, except for automated installations. The attack had been repelled, but analysis of recovered alien technology revealed disturbing truths. Humanity was being evaluated as a potential threat by a species that had been observing Earth for decades. The aliens possessed superior technology, but had been surprised by human adaptability and innovation during the Antarctic engagement. Intelligence suggested they were now developing strategies to neutralize human military capabilities before launching a full-scale invasion. The Artemis program represented humanity's response: identify and train individuals whose skills might provide advantages that conventional military doctrine couldn't match. Sarah Martinez's ability to achieve impossible accuracy with improvised equipment was exactly the type of capability that might prove crucial in an unconventional war. General Hayes made her decision. Sarah Martinez would be approached carefully, evaluated thoroughly, and if she proved suitable, recruited into a program she couldn't yet imagine. Meanwhile, Sarah was experiencing the aftermath of her record-breaking shot in ways she hadn't anticipated. News of her achievement had spread through shooting sports communities like wildfire. Manufacturers were calling with sponsorship offers. Shooting magazines wanted interviews. Even television producers were reaching out about documentary opportunities. She'd returned to her regular job Monday morning expecting normal routine, but found her colleagues buzzing with excitement about news articles featuring her accomplishment. Her boss, normally focused solely on software deadlines, pulled her aside to ask about media requests that were flooding the company's main number. "I had no idea you were some kind of shooting champion," he said, scrolling through articles on his phone. "Says here you broke a record that stood for 15 years. Sarah felt uncomfortable with the attention. She'd entered the competition to test her equipment and techniques, not to become a celebrity. The mathematics and engineering challenges of extreme-range shooting appealed to her analytical mind, but publicity was an unwelcome complication. What she didn't know was that her growing fame was making General Hayes' job more difficult. Artemis operated in complete secrecy, and recruiting high-profile civilians required delicate handling. Media attention meant that Sarah's activities were now being monitored, not just by military intelligence, but by foreign agencies interested in American shooting capabilities. That evening, Sarah returned to her garage workshop to find that someone had attempted to break in. Nothing appeared to be missing, but subtle signs suggested that her equipment had been examined by someone with technical knowledge. Tool positions were slightly different. Her loading press showed fingerprints that weren't hers, and her computer's hard drive had been accessed despite password protection. She immediately called the police, but the responding officer seemed more interested in her recent media coverage than the break-in. His questions focused on her equipment's value and whether she'd discussed her methods publicly. When she mentioned her shooting techniques and custom modifications, he took extensive notes that seemed unnecessary for a simple burglary report. After the officer left, Sarah spent hours checking her equipment for damage or tampering. Everything appeared functional, but the violation of her private workspace left her feeling exposed and vulnerable. She'd always considered her shooting hobby a peaceful pursuit, but apparently her abilities had attracted unwanted attention from unknown parties. What she couldn't have known was that the break-in had been conducted by a foreign intelligence team. attempting to understand American civilian shooting capabilities. Their government had intercepted communications about her record-breaking shot and wanted to determine whether her achievement represented individual talent or evidence of advanced military training programs. The failed intelligence operation had been detected by American surveillance systems, confirming General Hayes's assessment that Sarah Martinez had become a security asset, requiring protection. Her shooting abilities had not only broken records but had inadvertently revealed the level of interest foreign powers had in American small arms capabilities. The general's next decision was inevitable. Sarah Martinez needed to be brought into the Artemis program before her continued exposure compromised operational security or placed her in danger from hostile intelligence services. Sarah's Tuesday morning began with a knock on her door at exactly 7 o'clock. Through the peephole, she saw a woman in an unremarkable gray suit holding what appeared to be official credentials. Something about the visitor's posture and alert eyes suggested military background despite civilian clothing. Ms. Martinez, I'm Agent Sarah Chen with the Department of Defense. I'd like to discuss a matter of national security that involves your recent shooting achievement. Sarah opened the door cautiously, keeping the chain latch engaged. I'm not sure what you mean. It was just a shooting competition. Agent Chen's smile was professional but warm. May I come in? I think you'll find our conversation interesting, and I can explain why your garage was broken into yesterday evening. That got Sarah's attention. She disengaged the chain and invited the agent inside, noting how Chen's eyes quickly surveyed the room with practiced efficiency. Everything about this woman suggested competence and authority that went far beyond typical government bureaucracy. Coffee? Sarah offered, buying time to process this unexpected development. Please. Chen settled into the offered chair but maintained perfect posture, hands resting calmly in her lap. Ms. Martinez, how much do you know about theoretical limits of human marksmanship? Sarah returned with 2 cups, trying to read the agent's intentions. I know that most people accept limitations that aren't actually limitations. They're just boundaries that haven't been properly challenged. Exactly. Chen's expression grew more serious. Your shot yesterday demonstrated capabilities that our best military snipers believed were impossible for conventional equipment. You achieved precision that required mathematical calculations most professionals wouldn't attempt. Are you suggesting I did something wrong? Quite the opposite. You did something remarkably right, and that's caught the attention of people who understand the significance of what you accomplished. Chen opened a tablet and showed Sarah satellite imagery of the shooting competition. The detail was extraordinary, clearly taken from military reconnaissance systems. Sarah could see herself at the firing line, even identify her custom rifle. We've been monitoring civilian shooting competitions for security purposes, Chen explained. Your performance indicated capabilities that warranted further investigation. The break-in at your home was conducted by foreign intelligence agents attempting to understand American civilian marksmanship capabilities. Sarah felt a chill despite the warm coffee. Foreign agents? Because of a shooting competition? Because your achievement suggested that American civilians have access to training or technology that could represent military advantages. Other governments want to understand whether your capabilities represent individual talent or evidence of broader programs they should be concerned about. The agent leaned forward slightly. Ms. Martinez, I'm here to offer you an opportunity to use your skills in service of your country, but more importantly in service of humanity itself. I don't understand. Chen's expression grew grave. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. 3 years ago, Earth was attacked by an extraterrestrial force. The attack was repelled, but intelligence gathered during the engagement revealed that humanity is being evaluated as a potential threat by a technologically superior species. Sarah stared at the agent, trying to process information that sounded like science fiction. Extraterrestrial? You're serious? Completely serious. The alien force possessed advanced technology, but was surprised by human adaptability and innovation during the engagement. They're now developing strategies to neutralize human military capabilities before launching a full-scale invasion. Chen showed Sarah additional imagery on her tablet. Wreckage of clearly non-human technology. Analysis reports with classifications Sarah had never seen, and what appeared to be surveillance footage of beings that were definitely not human. The Artemis program was created to identify and train individuals whose unique capabilities might provide advantages in an unconventional, or against a technologically superior enemy. Your shooting abilities represent exactly the type of skill that could prove crucial. Sarah's analytical mind struggled to accept what she was hearing, but the evidence was compelling. The technology in the images was unlike anything terrestrial, and Agent Chen's credentials appeared genuine. More importantly, the explanation provided context for the foreign intelligence interest in her shooting capabilities. What exactly are you asking me to do? Join a small team of exceptional individuals who are being trained to operate beyond conventional military doctrine. Your shooting skills would be enhanced through advanced training and technology. But more importantly, you'd help develop new approaches to long-range engagement that could give humanity advantages against alien capabilities. Sarah walked to her window, looking out at her quiet suburban neighborhood. Everything appeared normal, but the revelation that humanity faced an existential threat from hostile aliens changed everything she thought she knew about the world. How do I know you're telling the truth? Chen stood and handed Sarah a secure phone. Call this number in exactly 24 hours. You'll be given coordinates for a meeting where you can see evidence that will convince you, but understand, once you make that call, your life will change permanently. You'll become part of something larger than civilian life can offer. The agent moved toward the door, then paused. Ms. Martinez, your shooting achievement wasn't just a personal accomplishment. It demonstrated capabilities that could help save our species. The question is whether you're willing to use those capabilities for something more important than weekend competitions. After Chen left, Sarah spent hours researching everything she could find about recent military activities, unusual government expenditures, and reports of unexplained phenomena. Most information was classified or unverifiable, but patterns emerged that supported the agent's claims. Military budgets had increased dramatically in areas related to unconventional warfare. New facilities had been constructed in remote locations with security measures that seemed excessive for normal operations. Most tellingly, recruitment for specialized programs had intensified, with emphasis on individuals with unique skills rather than traditional military experience. That evening, Sarah returned to her garage workshop with new perspective. Her custom rifle, her hand-loaded ammunition, her mathematical approach to extreme-range shooting suddenly seemed less like hobby pursuits and more like preparation for challenges she couldn't have imagined. She examined her equipment with different eyes, considering how her innovations might be adapted for scenarios beyond sporting competitions. Her understanding of ballistics, her ability to manufacture precision components, her talent for solving complex technical problems could indeed be valuable assets in unconventional warfare. The secure phone Agent Chen had given her sat on her workbench like a doorway to an unknown future. In 24 hours, she would make a decision that would either return her to normal civilian life or thrust her into circumstances that would test every skill she'd developed. But first, she needed to understand more about what she might be getting into. Sarah spent the night calculating trajectories for scenarios she'd never considered, shooting in different atmospheric conditions, engaging targets with unknown protective capabilities, adapting her techniques for equipment she'd never seen. By morning, she'd filled 6 pages with mathematical models for ballistic problems that no civilian should have been contemplating. Despite her reservations about Agent Chen's extraordinary claims, Sarah's analytical mind was already developing solutions for challenges that might await her in the Artemis program. The phone call would determine whether those calculations would remain theoretical exercises or become practical preparations for humanity's survival. Sarah held the secure phone for several minutes before finally pressing the call button. 24 hours of research and consideration had left her with more questions than answers. But one conclusion was inescapable. Agent Chen's story, however extraordinary, was supported by enough circumstantial evidence to warrant investigation. Coordinates received. A crisp, military voice responded immediately. Transportation will arrive at your location in 30 minutes. Bring identification but no electronic devices except this phone. Pack for 3 days. The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone, realizing she'd just committed to something that would either prove Agent Chen's claims or reveal an elaborate hoax. Either way, her normal life was about to be interrupted in ways she couldn't predict. A black SUV arrived precisely 30 minutes later. The driver, a young man in civilian clothes with unmistakably military bearing, said nothing during the 2-hour drive through increasingly remote countryside. Sarah watched familiar landscapes give way to areas she'd never seen. finally arriving at what appeared to be an abandoned industrial facility. The facade was convincing: rusted fencing, outdated security signs, and buildings that looked like they'd been empty for years. But Sarah's engineering background noticed details that suggested active use: fresh tire tracks leading to a loading dock, subtle electrical installations that seemed unnecessarily sophisticated for an abandoned facility, and security cameras disguised as weathered equipment. Agent Chen met them at what appeared to be a maintenance entrance. "Welcome to Artemis, Ms. Martinez. What you're about to see will answer your questions but raise many others." They descended through a service elevator that went much deeper than the building's exterior suggested possible. The industrial camouflage gave way to gleaming corridors lined with technology Sarah didn't recognize. Personnel moved with purpose through halls that hummed with electronic activity. "This facility was constructed 18 months ago," Chen explained as they walked. "Everything you see exists because of intelligence gathered during the Antarctic engagement. We've had to develop new approaches to warfare based on what we learned about alien capabilities." They entered a briefing room, where General Hayes waited with several other individuals in military uniforms. The general's presence immediately conveyed the serious nature of whatever Sarah was about to learn. "Ms. Martinez, I'm General Patricia Hayes, Director of the Artemis program. Agent Chen has briefed you on our basic situation, but I want you to see evidence that will convince you we're not dealing in fiction." The lights dimmed, and a large screen displayed footage that made Sarah's breath catch. The video showed a research station in Antarctica, under attack by creatures that were clearly not human. The beings moved with inhuman speed and coordination, using weapons that seemed to bend physics in impossible ways. "This engagement occurred 3 years ago," General Hayes narrated. "An alien reconnaissance force attacked Research Station Delta, apparently believing Earth was uninhabited except for automated installations. They were wrong. The footage showed human defenders responding with conventional weapons that seemed pitifully inadequate against alien technology. Energy barriers deflected bullets, and alien weapons reduced military vehicles to smoking wreckage with single shots. But despite technological disadvantages, the human defenders adapted their tactics with surprising effectiveness. What you're seeing is why we're still free," the general continued. "The aliens possessed superior technology, but they underestimated human adaptability and innovation. Our people found ways to exploit weaknesses in alien equipment and tactics that the enemy hadn't anticipated." Sarah watched humans using terrain, improvised explosives, and unconventional tactics to neutralize technologically superior opponents. The footage was clearly authentic, and the implications were staggering. The aliens withdrew after suffering unexpected casualties, but intelligence analysis suggests they're regrouping for a larger assault. They now understand that humanity represents a greater threat than initially assessed, and they're developing strategies to neutralize our advantages before attacking in force. The screen changed to display technical analysis of recovered alien equipment. Sarah's engineering background helped her understand the complexity of what she was seeing. Materials with properties that defied conventional physics, energy systems that operated on principles human science didn't fully comprehend, and weapons that could manipulate matter at the molecular level. "This is why the Artemis program exists," General Hayes explained. "Conventional military doctrine won't be adequate against an enemy with these capabilities. We need individuals who can think beyond established parameters and develop approaches that aliens won't anticipate." Agent Chen activated another display showing profiles of Artemis team members. Sarah recognized the pattern immediately. Individuals with exceptional skills developed outside traditional military channels. A mathematician who'd solved theoretical problems that military computers couldn't handle. A mechanic who'd built vehicles that outperformed military specifications. A pilot who'd achieved flight capabilities that aeronautical engineers considered impossible. "Your shooting achievement caught our attention because it demonstrated capabilities that formal military training often overlooks," the general continued. "You've independently developed techniques and equipment that exceed our best specifications. More importantly, you've shown the type of innovative thinking that could provide advantages against alien technology." Sarah studied the alien equipment analysis, her mind automatically beginning to calculate potential countermeasures. The energy barriers that deflected conventional projectiles appeared to operate on specific frequency ranges. Her understanding of ballistics suggested approaches that might circumvent those defenses. What exactly would my role be? Develop long-range engagement capabilities that could neutralize alien targets beyond the range of their defensive systems, General Hayes replied. Your shooting skills would be enhanced with advanced technology, but more importantly, you'd help design new approaches that combine human innovation with equipment specifically created to exploit alien weaknesses. The General activated a final display showing Sarah's ballistic calculations from the previous day. Somehow Artemis had obtained her notebook pages and mathematical models. You spent last night calculating trajectories for scenarios that no civilian should have been contemplating, Chen observed. Your mind immediately began solving problems that most people wouldn't even recognize. That's exactly the type of thinking Artemis needs. Sarah realized that her decision had already been made during those hours of midnight calculations. Her analytical mind couldn't ignore evidence of an existential threat to humanity, and her skills appeared uniquely suited to address specific aspects of that threat. If I agree to join, what happens to my normal life? That depends on how quickly we can develop effective countermeasures, General Hayes replied honestly. If we succeed in creating adequate defenses, you might eventually return to civilian life. If we fail, civilian life won't exist for anyone. The room fell silent as Sarah considered implications that extended far beyond personal concerns. Her weekend hobby had evolved into potential contributions to humanity's survival, and the mathematical principles she'd applied to sporting competitions might prove crucial in an interstellar conflict. I'll need to see your equipment specifications and understand exactly what you're asking me to develop, she said finally. General, Hayes smiled for the first time since Sarah had arrived. Welcome to Artemis, Ms. Martinez. Let's go show you what human innovation can accomplish when survival depends on thinking beyond conventional limits. The Artemis Equipment Laboratory exceeded anything Sarah had imagined possible. Advanced manufacturing systems created components with tolerances measured in nanometers. Materials science had progressed decades beyond civilian technology, incorporating principles learned from analysis of alien wreckage. Most remarkably, human engineers had successfully reverse-engineered alien energy systems to power weapons that combined terrestrial innovation with extraterrestrial physics. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the program's chief weapons designer, guided Sarah through equipment that represented humanity's most advanced technological achievements. We've learned that alien defensive systems operate on predictable frequency ranges, she explained, examining a rifle that seemed to glow with internal energy. Their barriers can deflect conventional projectiles, but they have vulnerabilities that human innovation can exploit. Sarah studied the weapon with fascination and growing understanding. The rifle incorporated principles from her own designs, but extended them using technology that shouldn't have existed. The barrel was constructed from metamaterials that manipulated electromagnetic fields to enhance projectile velocity beyond anything achievable through chemical propulsion alone. How fast? She asked, recognizing the implications immediately. Initial tests achieved muzzle velocities approaching 4,000 meters per second, Dr. Vasquez replied. But velocity is only part of the solution. The real breakthrough came from understanding how alien barriers analyze incoming threats. The doctor activated a holographic display showing alien defensive systems in operation. Sarah watched energy barriers deflect incoming projectiles, but her analytical mind immediately began identifying patterns in how the barriers responded to different types of threats. They're reactive systems, she observed, studying the barrier's behavior. They analyze projectile characteristics and adjust defensive parameters accordingly. But that analysis takes time. Exactly. The barriers are incredibly sophisticated, but they require processing time to identify and counter incoming threats. Human innovation provided the solution: projectiles that change characteristics during flight. Dr. Vasquez showed Sarah ammunition unlike anything she'd ever seen. The bullets incorporated programmable materials that could alter their mass, aerodynamic properties, and electromagnetic signature while in flight. Alien defensive systems would begin analyzing one type of projectile, but encounter something completely different by the time the bullet reached its target. The mathematics involved are extraordinary, the doctor continued. Conventional ballistics calculations become inadequate when projectile characteristics change dynamically. We need someone who understands both the theoretical physics and practical applications of extreme-range shooting. Sarah's excitement grew as she recognized the challenges involved. This wasn't just an extension of her weekend hobby. It was ballistics pushed beyond the boundaries of conventional physics. Her mathematical models would need to account for variables that changed continuously during bullet flight. "Show me the test range," she requested. The underground firing range stretched for nearly 5 kilometers through natural cave systems that had been expanded and reinforced. Targets could be positioned at distances approaching 6,000 meters, with environmental controls that simulated everything from vacuum conditions to dense, atmospheric compositions that might be encountered on alien worlds. Sarah's first test shots with the advanced rifle produced results that defied her understanding of ballistics. The weapon's energy-enhanced propulsion system eliminated many variables that affected conventional shooting, but introduced new complexities related to electromagnetic field interactions and metamaterial behavior. "The learning curve is steep," admitted Captain Maria Santos, Artemis's lead marksmanship instructor. "Everything you know about ballistics applies, but you'll need to master additional principles that most shooters never encounter." Over the following days, Sarah immersed herself in training that combined familiar shooting disciplines with physics that pushed the boundaries of human understanding. The rifle's programmable ammunition required real-time calculations that adjusted for changing projectile characteristics throughout flight. Computer assistance helped, but intuitive understanding of the underlying principles proved crucial for achieving consistent accuracy. Her mathematical background proved invaluable as she developed new ballistic models that accounted for dynamic projectile behavior. The equations filled dozens of pages with calculations that extended conventional ballistics into realms that bordered on science fiction. Yet the results were undeniably real. Shots that could defeat alien defensive systems at ranges that provided tactical advantages human forces desperately needed. Most importantly, Sarah's innovative approach to problem-solving revealed possibilities that formal military training had overlooked. Her civilian perspective, unconstrained by conventional doctrine, suggested applications for the technology that military engineers hadn't considered. "You're thinking about this differently than our other specialists," Dr. Vasquez observed during a design review session. "Your approach combines theoretical understanding with practical innovation in ways that produce unexpected solutions." Sarah had been developing modifications to the programmable ammunition that would allow multiple projectiles to coordinate their behavior during flight. Instead of firing single bullets that changed characteristics individually, her concept involved synchronized projectiles that could overwhelm alien defensive systems through coordinated attacks that exploited multiple vulnerabilities simultaneously. The aliens analyzed threats sequentially, she explained, sketching trajectory diagrams on the laboratory's smartboards. But if multiple projectiles change characteristics in coordinated patterns, their defensive systems become overwhelmed by processing requirements. They can't analyze and counter multiple simultaneous threats that are constantly changing. The concept required mathematical precision that pushed even advanced computers to their limits, but Sarah's understanding of both ballistics and programming enabled her to develop algorithms that made coordinated projectile behavior possible. Her weekend shooting hobby had evolved into contributions that could provide humanity with crucial advantages in an interstellar conflict. General Hayes reviewed Sarah's progress reports with growing satisfaction. The Artemis program had successfully identified and recruited an individual whose unique combination of skills was producing innovations that formal military research had failed to achieve. More importantly, Sarah's work was demonstrating that human creativity could find solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable. But time was becoming a critical factor. Intelligence reports suggested that alien reconnaissance activities were increasing, indicating that the enemy was preparing for their next offensive. Humanity needed every possible advantage, and Sarah's ballistic innovations represented technologies that could prove decisive in the coming conflict. The general made a decision that would accelerate Sarah's integration into operational activities. Instead of continuing extended training, she would be assigned to a field team that was preparing for direct engagement with alien forces. Her theoretical innovations would be tested under conditions that no laboratory could simulate. Sarah received the assignment notification with mixed emotions. Part of her was excited to see her work applied in real-world situations, But another part recognized that she was about to transition from civilian life to active participation in humanity's most dangerous conflict. Her weekend warrior days were ending, replaced by responsibilities that could determine whether human civilization survived the challenges ahead. The mathematical principles she'd applied to sporting competitions were about to be tested in scenarios where failure meant more than missing a target. It meant humanity losing its fight for survival. Sarah's first field assignment came sooner than anyone expected. Intelligence satellites detected an alien reconnaissance probe approaching Earth's outer atmosphere, and Artemis Command decided this represented an ideal opportunity to test Sarah's innovations under real combat conditions. The mission parameters were straightforward: intercept the probe before it could complete its surveillance mission and return to its mothership with updated intelligence. About human defensive capabilities, the insertion team consisted of 5 Artemis operatives, each selected for specialized skills that complemented Sarah's long-range capabilities. Captain Maria Santos provided tactical leadership and close-quarters combat expertise. Dr. James Park handled electronic warfare and alien technology analysis. Sergeant Mike Rodriguez managed explosives and demolitions. Lieutenant Amy Chen, Agent Chen's younger sister, served as communications specialist and mission coordinator. Their target location was a plateau in the Rocky Mountains where atmospheric conditions and terrain features provided optimal positioning for engaging the alien probe. Sarah's ballistic calculations indicated that successful interception required positioning at precise coordinates with timing accuracy measured in seconds. The team reached their position after a grueling 12-hour approach march through terrain that tested everyone's endurance. Sarah carried her advanced rifle and enough programmable ammunition for 20 shots, though mission planners hoped she would need far fewer. The weight of equipment designed for interstellar warfare made her appreciate the simplicity of weekend shooting competitions. Probe contact in 47 minutes, Lieutenant Chen reported, monitoring satellite tracking data through her encrypted communication system. Current trajectory suggests optimal engagement window will last approximately 90 seconds. Sarah began her pre-shot routine with methodical precision that had become second nature during Artemis training. Environmental sensors confirmed atmospheric conditions, wind patterns, and electromagnetic interference levels. Her rifle's advanced systems automatically calibrated for local gravitational variations and atmospheric density that could affect projectile behavior. The alien probe approached with speed that made conventional intercept methods impossible. Human fighter aircraft couldn't reach the necessary altitude quickly enough, and ground-based missiles lacked the precision required to hit such a small, fast-moving target. Sarah's rifle represented humanity's only realistic chance of preventing the probe from completing its mission. Through her advanced scope, Sarah tracked the probe as it descended through the upper atmosphere. The alien craft was smaller than intelligence estimates had suggested, perhaps 3 meters in length, but its movement patterns indicated sophisticated maneuvering capabilities that would make targeting extremely challenging. Target acquired, she reported, following the probe's erratic flight path through her scope's tracking system. Beginning final calculations. The mathematical complexity of the shot exceeded anything Sarah had attempted during training. The probe's speed, altitude, and unpredictable course changes required real-time ballistic solutions that pushed her analytical abilities to their limits. Additionally, the programmable ammunition needed precise timing to change characteristics at exactly the right moments during its flight. 30 seconds to optimal engagement window, Lieutenant Chen announced. Sarah's breathing steadied into the rhythm she'd perfected through countless hours of practice. Her finger found the trigger's familiar pressure point while her mind processed trajectory calculations that involved variables no civilian shooter had ever considered. The rifle's advanced systems provided computational support, but success ultimately depended on her ability to integrate complex mathematics with intuitive shooting skills. The probe entered her engagement envelope at 17,000 meters altitude, traveling at speeds that made visual tracking nearly impossible. Sarah's scope automatically compensated for the target's velocity, while her ammunition's programming adjusted for changing atmospheric conditions during the projectile's flight. She pressed the trigger. The rifle's energy-enhanced propulsion system launched the programmable bullet with muzzle velocity that exceeded conventional physics. Sarah maintained sight picture through the scope, watching trajectory indicators that tracked both projectile and target as they converged along paths calculated to intersect at precisely the right moment. For 8 seconds, mathematics became reality as her bullet climbed through thin atmosphere toward a target that represented humanity's most advanced enemy. The programmable ammunition changed characteristics 3 times during flight, shifting from high-velocity penetrator to electromagnetic disruptor to kinetic warhead as alien defensive systems attempted to analyze and counter the incoming threat. The explosion, when it came, was visible even in daylight. The alien probe disintegrated in a brilliant flash that confirmed successful interception. Debris scattered across 50 square kilometers of mountain wilderness, providing intelligence opportunities that could advance human understanding of alien technology by years. Target eliminated, Sarah reported, her voice steady, despite adrenaline that made her hands tremble slightly. Probe destroyed at range of 17,200 meters. The team's celebration was brief but heartfelt. They had just proven that human innovation could successfully engage alien technology in direct combat. More importantly, Sarah's ballistic innovations had performed flawlessly under conditions that no laboratory simulation could duplicate. But their success had consequences that became apparent within hours. Alien response to the probe's destruction was swift and alarming. Deep space monitoring stations detected multiple ships accelerating toward Earth's solar system, apparently abandoning whatever careful observation schedule they had been following. General Hayes received the intelligence reports with grim satisfaction. The successful interception had demonstrated human capabilities that aliens had underestimated, but it had also triggered an aggressive response that suggested the main invasion was now imminent. "Your shot changed everything," she told Sarah during the post-mission debriefing. "The aliens now know that we can engage their technology at ranges they considered safe. They're abandoning subtle reconnaissance in favor of direct assault." Sarah studied tactical displays showing alien fleet movements toward Earth. Her successful shot had brought humanity valuable intelligence about alien defensive vulnerabilities, but it had also accelerated the timeline for full-scale conflict. "How long do we have?" "Intelligence estimates suggest 6 to 8 weeks before their main force reaches Earth's outer system," General Hayes replied. "We need to use that time to prepare defenses based on what we learned from your engagement." The next phase of Sarah's involvement would extend far beyond individual marksmanship. Her innovations needed to be scaled up for mass production and integrated into defensive systems that could protect entire populations. The mathematical principles she'd developed for extreme-range shooting would become the foundation for weapons, systems that represented humanity's best hope for survival. Sarah's weekend warrior days had ended permanently. She was now a key architect of humanity's defense against an existential threat, and her unique combination of civilian innovation and military application had proven crucial for developing capabilities that conventional approaches had failed to achieve. The alien fleet approaching Earth would discover that humanity had used the time since the Antarctic engagement to develop new approaches to warfare that combined human creativity with captured alien technology. Sarah's contributions represented just one example of how human adaptability could find solutions to problems that seemed impossible to solve. The real test would come when alien forces encountered defensive systems that incorporated her ballistic innovations on a planetary scale. The alien invasion fleet arrived exactly 6 weeks after Sarah's successful probe interception, but they encountered an Earth that had transformed itself into something they hadn't anticipated. Sarah's ballistic innovations had been scaled up and integrated into planetary defense networks that turned human creativity into weapons of unprecedented effectiveness. From her position in the Artemis Command Center, Sarah watched as early engagement reports confirmed that her mathematical models were performing beyond expectations on a global scale. Orbital defense platforms equipped with her programmable ammunition technology were successfully penetrating alien defensive systems that had seemed impenetrable just months earlier. Denver Defense Grid reports successful engagement of incoming assault craft. Lieutenant Chen announced from her communication station. 4 alien fighters destroyed at ranges exceeding 20,000 kilometers. Similar reports flooded in from defense installations worldwide. The coordinated projectile systems Sarah had developed were overwhelming alien defensive capabilities through synchronized attacks that their technology couldn't counter effectively. Human innovation had found ways to exploit weaknesses that aliens didn't know they possessed. But the invasion force was larger and more sophisticated than intelligence estimates had predicted. Alien command vessels hung in high orbit, apparently studying human defensive responses and adapting their tactics accordingly. The enemy was learning from early defeats and developing countermeasures that threatened to neutralize humanity's hard-won advantages. "We're seeing adaptive responses to our programmable ammunition," Dr. Vasquez reported from the weapons analysis station. "Alien defensive systems are updating their threat recognition protocols. Our current advantages may be temporary." Sarah studied tactical displays showing alien fleet movements and defensive adaptations. The enemy's ability to modify their technology in real time suggested intelligence capabilities that exceeded human estimates. Worse, their adaptive responses indicated that Sarah's innovations, while successful initially, might become ineffective as aliens learn to counter them. "We need to stay ahead of their adaptation curve," Sarah said, her mind already working on solutions. "If they can modify their defenses, we need ammunition that can modify itself even more rapidly." The next 12 hours became a frantic race between human innovation and alien adaptation. Sarah worked with Dr. Vasquez's team to develop second-generation, programmable ammunition that incorporated principles of artificial intelligence, creating projectiles that could modify their behavior based on real-time analysis of target defensive responses. Meanwhile, alien ground forces began landing operations in remote areas where human defensive coverage was limited. These forces moved with speed and coordination that human military doctrine hadn't anticipated, establishing beachheads that threatened to compromise planetary defense networks from within. General Hayes made the decision to deploy Artemis field teams against alien ground operations, using the same unconventional tactics that had proven successful during the Antarctic engagement. Sarah's role evolved from weapons development to direct tactical support, providing long-range engagement capabilities that conventional military units couldn't match. Her first ground engagement occurred near Yellowstone National Park, where alien forces had established a forward operating base that threatened the Western defense grid. Sarah's team approached through terrain that favored human knowledge of local conditions over alien technological advantages. The aliens had learned from their earlier defeats and deployed more sophisticated defensive systems around their installations. Sarah's scope revealed energy barriers and automated weapons that represented significant advances over equipment encountered during previous engagements. To primary target, 4,800 meters, she reported, studying the alien command structure through her advanced optics. Multiple defensive layers visible. Conventional approach won't be effective. Sarah's new artificial intelligence ammunition represented the culmination of everything she'd learned about ballistic innovation. The projectiles incorporated processing capabilities that allowed them to analyze target defenses during flight and modify their characteristics accordingly. More importantly, they could communicate with each other to coordinate attacks that exploited multiple vulnerabilities simultaneously. She fired a 3-round burst, each projectile programmed with different initial parameters, but capable of cooperative behavior during flight. The aliens' defensive systems detected the incoming threats and began adaptive responses. But the ammunition's artificial intelligence proved faster than alien processing capabilities. The first projectile served as a probe, testing defensive responses and transmitting data to its companions. The second projectile modified its approach based on that intelligence, forcing alien defenses to recalibrate. The third projectile exploited the confusion created by its predecessors, penetrating barriers that had been optimized to stop different types of threats. The alien command structure erupted in a series of explosions that confirmed successful target destruction. More importantly, the engagement had demonstrated that human innovation could maintain advantages even against adaptable alien technology. Similar successes occurred at engagement sites worldwide as Artemis teams applied Sarah's innovations against alien ground forces. The enemy's initial advantages in technology were being offset by human creativity and adaptability that aliens couldn't match. But the decisive moment came when alien command vessels in high orbit began targeting Earth cities directly, apparently deciding that civilian casualties might break human resistance more effectively than military engagement. Sarah's planetary defense systems faced their ultimate test against weapons that could devastate entire metropolitan areas. The coordinated defense response represented the largest application of Sarah's ballistic innovations ever attempted. Thousands of orbital platforms fired synchronized volleys of programmable ammunition designed to penetrate alien command vessel defenses and disable their primary weapon systems. Sarah watched from the command center as her mathematical models scaled up to planetary proportions played out in real-time combat. The artificial intelligence ammunition performed flawlessly, adapting to alien defensive responses faster than enemy systems could counter-adapt. One by one, alien command vessels lost their offensive capabilities as Sarah's innovations found ways through defenses that had seemed impenetrable. The enemy fleet, deprived of their primary weapons and facing continued attacks from ammunition that grew more effective with each engagement, began withdrawing from Earth's orbital space. The alien retreat was swift and complete, suggesting that their leadership had concluded that humanity represented a more formidable opponent than initial assessments had indicated. Earth had successfully defended itself against a technologically superior enemy through innovation that combined human creativity with captured alien technology. In the aftermath of humanity's victory, Sarah found herself reflecting on the extraordinary journey that had begun with a weekend shooting competition. Her custom rifle and hand-loaded ammunition had evolved into weapon systems that had helped save human civilization from extinction. General Hayes approached Sarah in the command center as celebration erupted around them. "Your weekend warrior days led to something remarkable," she said with genuine admiration. "Human innovation proved superior to alien technology because individuals like you refused to accept conventional limitations." Sarah nodded, studying displays that showed alien ships disappearing into deep space. Her mathematical models and ballistic innovations had played crucial roles in humanity's survival, but the real victory belonged to human adaptability and creativity that could find solutions to seemingly impossible problems. The aliens would undoubtedly return eventually, probably with better understanding of human capabilities and improved countermeasures. But humanity now knew that technological superiority wasn't insurmountable when faced with innovation that could think beyond established parameters. Sarah's transformation from weekend shooting enthusiast to defender of humanity demonstrated something that aliens had failed to understand. Human beings possessed capabilities that couldn't be measured purely through technological analysis. Creativity, adaptability, and the refusal to accept limitations could prove more powerful than advanced technology when survival was at stake. The next phase of human development would involve preparing for the aliens' inevitable return. But humanity now possessed advantages that would make future conflicts more balanced. Sarah's contributions had proven that individual innovation could scale up to planetary significance when applied with proper support and resources. Her weekend warrior achievement had indeed changed everything, just as General Hayes had predicted when she first ordered Sarah's activation for the Artemis program.